asked you guys on Twitter recently who have just been the most disappointing players in the NBA this season, and I honestly was shocked going through the replies to this tweet and realizing how many players have kind of been disappointing relative to expectations going into this year. So today I have put together the top 20 most disappointing players so far in the 2025 NBA season, pretty much halfway through it. And if there's somebody here that I mentioned that you don't think is disappointing, let me know down below. Or if there's a disappointing player that I didn't talk about in this video, also let me know down below. And oh yeah, hit that subscribe button if you guys are not already. Let's get into this. I think he could be considered the most disappointing player in the NBA this year. And this is insane because he got extended in the offseason. He got the keys to the city. He was on Team USA for the Olympics. And that's Bam Adebayo of the Miami Heat. Bam was supposed to incorporate more threes in his game this year. And for the first time in his career, he's taking over 0.6 threes a night. That's at 2.6 this year. And he's shooting just 28% from three. Bam is averaging the lowest amount of points per game in his career as well since year 3 back in 2020 at 15.9. He does not look like the offensive player that we've seen over the last 4 years where he's averaged 18 plus. Bam has also been an all-star the last 2 years. He's finished top 5 at Defensive Player of the Year voting. I'm not even sure if that's going to happen this year because he's currently behind Evan Mobley, Jaren Jackson Jr., Vu Dort, Shea, Rudy Gobert for that award right now, with Wemby being the odds-on favorite. And just shooting 45% from the field as a center and just not being what you've been in the past defensively as the top defender in the league. Bam is still a good defender, but he's obviously held to a higher standard. I thought maybe this was going to be the first year of his career that he could win Defensive Player of the Year. And with Jimmy Butler being currently suspended from the Heat and that whole drama going on, yeah, this has been disappointing for Bam not taking a step offensively this year as he's in the middle of his prime at 27 years old. Next up, we're going to go to the Midwest. We're going to talk about the Chicago Bulls. And I thought about mentioning Josh Giddey in this video, but I'm not going to. I'm going to talk about somebody they gave $90 million to in the offseason, Patrick Williams. Yeah, I'm not really sure who they were competing with to giving Patrick Williams $90 million, who is making $18 million every single year till 2029. And Patrick Williams is just taking another step back offensively. I remember last year he got off to a really bad start and then picked it up before he ended up getting hurt to finish off year number 4. This year in year number 5, he has started 30 out of his 31 games this year. He's averaging 9.4 points, down from the last 2 seasons. He's shooting 36% from 3, 38% from the field, and is averaging 4 points, 2 assists, and under a steal and block a night. He's only playing 27 minutes per game and just does not look like an impact player. And I also feel like he's lost a little bit of a step and definitely some of his athleticism that we saw early in his career at Chicago and when he was at Florida State. And he's still just 23 years old. Maybe he's going to take a DeAndre Hunter career path and there could be like a year 6, year 7 breakout. But right now, Patrick Williams has been disappointing for Chicago this year. This year has been disappointing in a weird way for them because they're not good, they're not bad, they're just mid, which is the worst case scenario for this Bulls team since they don't own their first round pick this year if it's outside the top 10. So I think Patrick Williams has been at the forefront of the Chicago Bulls disappointments this season. But at least Patrick Williams has been playing. The next player I'm going to talk about got suspended this year for 1 game by the team, and he's only played 9 games, and that is Zion Williamson. Last year, we finally got a healthy Zion Williamson season. He only missed 12 games. He played 70 last year, and we got to see Point Zion really excel in this New Orleans Pelicans offense. They had playoff aspirations going into this year, and not just Zion, but everybody on New Orleans has been hurt this year. The team has been pretty much cursed with injuries outside of like Yves Missi, who's played every game. But Zion gets that hamstring injury. He misses some time. We find out that there's a clause in his contract that New Orleans can actually cut him right now, and they don't owe him a single dollar on the rest of his deal. He comes back though. He's got to miss another game because there's some conditioning things they need to worry about. And then he misses the team flight, or at least he was late to it, and he ended up getting suspended 1 game by the team. And I just feel like when it rains, it pours. And the Zion Williamson situation and environment in New Orleans is not really being the best it could be right now. And I do feel like at the end of the day, Zion and New Orleans just may need to break up. There's got to be a change of scenery for Zion, who when he's out there, he can still look like a good offensive player, but I don't know if we're ever going to see him reach that potential because every time we think he's getting there, he gets hurt. It's just another year of disappointment with Zion in New Orleans. Since they made that Karl-Anthony Towns trade late in the offseason, you could bring up Anthony Edwards if you thought he could emerge as a top 5-ish player in the NBA. You could bring up Julius Randle or maybe Rudy Gobert or Mike Conley. I'm going to talk about Jaden McDaniels because Jaden McDaniels got that big extension from the Washington Wizards a few off seasons ago, and he's making $23 million this year, and that is going up every single year till 2029, where he's going to be making $30 million that year, and it feels like he's regressing offensively as well since that 2023 season, where Jaden McDaniels is averaging just 44% from the field this year, which is tied for his career low. He's shooting 33% from 3, which is second lowest of his career. He's averaging 10 points, which is 2 points down from that 2023 season, averaging just above an assist a night and 5 rebounds. And I do think Jaden McDaniels provides you some value defensively. I think he's been more active in the passing lanes this year and using that length and wingspan to average a career high in steals and deflections. It's just I would like for Jaden McDaniels to take a step offensively. Maybe this is more of a me thing and having high expectations for McDaniels, who's 24 years old. And I thought at one day could be a very good number 3 behind Ant and Karl-Anthony Towns. Now that Cat is no longer there, Julius Randle may not be on this team, possibly after the February trade deadline. I would like for McDaniels to step up with his aggression and his offensive shot making, but maybe that's just never going to come. So let me know in the comments who's been the most disappointing Timberwolves this year. For my next player, maybe more so the fan base than the player overall, but it's got to be Jimmy Butler in Miami, because Jimmy Butler this year was going into a potential contract year. He has a player option for next year's season. We all know that. I thought we were going to get a locked in, pissed off Jimmy Butler, who maybe thought he could have beaten Boston in round number 1 or beat Philly in the play-in tournament if he didn't get hurt. This year, he played 22 games. I feel like half of those, he just didn't look like he wanted to be out there. There were still some really good Jimmy Butler moments in those 22 games, but some also were just like, this isn't the Jimmy Butler that I know in the past. Does he even want to be on this Heat team? And then there's reports that comes out that he wants to get traded. Agent shuts those down. Pat Riley and the Miami Heat shut those down. Then they come out again. Shams doubles down on it and looks like he was right. Apparently the Phoenix Suns want him. He wants to go to Phoenix, which so many things needs to go their way for that to happen because of Bradley Beal's no trade clause. But I think just for what Jimmy Butler meant to the Miami Heat, bringing them to the finals in 2020 and in 2023, and all of it coming to a close this year after the team did struggle to improve the roster around Jimmy Butler over time. They struck out on Donovan Mitchell and Damian Lillard in the past. And maybe that's just what set off Jimmy Butler in Miami. So I think it's just disappointing Jimmy's Miami Heat career ending like this, rather than maybe Butler's play overall or the Heat this year, because both of them have had their disappointments and their fair share of underwhelming moments. But I'm just sad it's ending like this, because Jimmy in Miami was a very cool era. Next up, we're going to talk about the year 2 man in Portland that I still had very high expectations so far. He's still just 20 years old, so I'm not counting him out just yet. But Scoot Henderson has been a little underwhelming this year. Now, we had a 39-point performance against the Brooklyn Nets, and that was encouraging. His aggressiveness looked great, and he knocked down 8 threes. He went 8 of 10 from 3-point range, which is the best 3-point shooting game of his career. He went 12 for 12 at the free throw line a couple games earlier, but it just feels like every time Scoot puts together a couple of good games, it just does not stay as consistent as we would like. In that game against Brooklyn, they lost by 18, and then Brooklyn ended up losing by 59 points to the LA Clippers. So I would like for Scoot to do this maybe against a better team as well. And this year, he's averaging 11.8 points a night, which is about 2 fewer than he had last year. He's playing 2 less minutes a game. He's came off the bench for 28 out of his 32 games so far. At the moment I'm recording this, the field goal percentage and 3-point percentage is up. Free throw percentage is down. I think the defense has looked better this year. I just had a little bit higher expectations for Scoot, and I'm just ready for this era of Portland Trailblazers basketball to be over with, and mainly the Chauncey Billups era. I don't really want to watch DeAndre Ayton or Jeremy Grant anymore when I'm tuning into Blazers games, and I want to see a little bit more of their younger guys. Hopefully they end up getting a better draft pick, because they're probably not going to win a lot of games in the second half. I get excited watching Donovan Clingan and Toumani Camara defensively. I just want to see more Scoot Henderson, and I think him in year 2 has been slightly disappointing because he hasn't been that much better than what he was as a rookie. Yes, there are signs of progression, but I just think it's not going to work out with him under Chauncey Billups in Portland. So it's been disappointing. Next up, we're going to talk about somebody that was the best player on an Eastern Conference Finals team last year, Tyrese Haliburton of the Indiana Pacers. It's been weird so far this year for Tyrese Haliburton, who just could not hit a shot on the road to start off this year. He's currently averaging 18 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 8.8 assists, which is down from what he had last year, where he was averaging a league high 10.9 assists. He is shooting 36% from 3, but has been better and better as of late. So I think Haliburton will not be on my most disappointing player list at the end of the year. He's been very good since the calendar year hit 2025 and was good in December, at least a little bit better with his efficiency overall, finishing at the rim, and way better than the start he got off to the year, because we were very worried about Haliburton, and a lot of people under that tweet that I tweeted out mentioned Tyrese Haliburton's name. So I still ended up having him here because I think there's still some problems defensively, and he hasn't taken that step that we thought he could take after last year's Eastern Conference Finals run. So it's going to be interesting to see how he plays in the second half of this year. Is it going to be more like what we've seen in December or January, or is it going to be more like we've seen from October and November? I don't know if a lot of people have talked about this guy this year, but the team overall, the San Antonio Spurs, have been fun to watch because of Chris Paul and obviously Victor Wembanyama. But Devin Vassell really hasn't taken that leap this year that we all expected him to as a number 2 to Wemb, because Vassell's numbers are down across the board from last year's kind of breakout year where he averaged 19.5 points. That's down to 15.8 this year. The assists are down. The rebounds are pretty much the same. Last year, he played 33 minutes a night, down to 29 a night this year. He's came off the bench a little bit more. He shot 47% from the field last year, down 4% this year. His three-point shot is down. Free throws are down as well, both in percentage-wise and getting to the free throw line. I think it's a little concerning for Devin Vassell, who's 24 years old, and you would think would ride that momentum from last year's season and would be even better this year, playing with one of the greatest playmakers and passers of all time in Chris Paul. And he's under contract for the next 5 years as well, making $20+ million. So he's part of the San Antonio Spurs' future plans, as we think, unless he's going to be used as a main piece in a bigger trade down the line. So I do wonder where Devin Vassell will be in a few years. And is this the type of Devin Vassell we're going to get? Or is it going to go back to what he was last year? Because injuries could definitely be a factor. Speaking of injuries, the Orlando Magic have been banged up a ton this year, and they just got Paolo Banchero back. Hopefully, they do get Franz Wagner back soon. But their big free agency pickup, giving 3 years, $60+ million to KCP, hasn't really worked out so far. KCP is 31 years old. He's going to be 32 very soon. It seems like he lost a little bit of a step defensively, but is still above average on that end of the floor. And I think he's struggling to go from that Denver Nuggets offense, which is very focused on everybody around Nikola Jokic, and it's different here in Orlando, and that team overall has struggled offensively this year a ton because they've been without Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner for a decent amount of time. KCP is averaging 9 points per game, which is down from what it was last year. The efficiency is down across the board as well. He shot 46% from the field last year, 41% from the field this year, 40% from three last year, down to 31% from three this year because he's not getting as good of looks because of the top guys being out and he's no longer playing with Nikola Jokic. And if you were going to equal KCP's play this year to a money standpoint, it definitely would not be around the $22 million he's getting paid. He's getting paid $21.5 million next year, and then has a $21.6 million player option in 2027 when he's going to be around 35 years old. And who knows, maybe that contract is going to be used in a trade down the line. And Orlando had cap space, so they might as well have used it. And I do like KCP as a veteran addition to this team, and he's going to be probably playing a little bit less minutes in the playoffs. But I think as like an analytics dream to get him on this Orlando Magic team, it's been disappointing so far in his first half of his Magic career. We talked about Scoot Henderson earlier. I'm going to talk about another 2023 draft pick that's been disappointing this year, Victor Wembanyama. I'm just kidding. It's Brandyn Podziemski over there in Golden State, who I had going number 8 to Indiana in a redraft going into this year. I'm not even sure he'd be a lottery pick anymore because I feel like he hasn't been utilized the best to his ability, kind of what he was last year in Golden State. This year, he's averaging just 8 points, 4.5 rebounds, and 3 assists, and he's shooting 40% from the field, but has struggled a ton with this three-point shot. That is down to 29% from three, down from 38% to what he shot last year. And the usage rate has stayed around the same, so he's been pretty much as involved as he was last year in this Golden State Warriors offense, but he's playing up a little bit more. Last year, he played a lot of minutes at the shooting guard position, and even a little bit at the point guard position. He's playing half of his minutes at the 2, but also half of his minutes at the 3 and the 4, which doesn't really make a lot of sense, but they did end up losing Klay Thompson in the offseason. They added guys like Buddy Hield, Dennis Schroeder, who are going to bump Brandyn Podziemski down a little bit, and I do wonder if he's going to be traded this year at the deadline. He definitely lost a ton of value from what the Warriors had with him in the offseason, where he could have potentially headlined a Lauri Markkanen deal, and that's not going to happen anymore. All right, I talked about KCP not being a great signing from the 2024 offseason. I'm going to bring up Paul George. Yeah, I'm going to talk about the Philadelphia 76er that got a massive 4-year deal worth over $200 million, and he's going to be getting paid $56 million in 2028, and Paul George is going to be almost 38 years old. And Paul George got hurt in the preseason and at the beginning of the year for Philadelphia, but this year has been cursed for Philadelphia as a whole with injuries. We'll get into somebody else in a little bit, but Paul George, throughout 27 games this year, 17 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. The efficiency hasn't looked great, 42% from the field, 35% from three. And when you're watching him, looks a little bit less shifty as he had in the past with the Clippers. That may be him almost being 35 years old. That may be him suffering 2 notable injuries earlier in the year. But this is a very big deal for Philadelphia. Everybody was applauding them for using their max cap space on Paul George, and they wanted to build that big 3 around Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. But he is going from that number 2 option in LA to now a number 3 option when the 76ers are fully healthy, and that's not as often as we think. Because you know what? I'll say it. I'm going to bring up Joel Embiid. You could also bring up Tyrese Maxey as well, because he has struggled to take a step as a number 1 option with Paul George and Joel Embiid missing time. But I didn't really have those expectations for Tyrese Maxey, but they are definitely notable with him struggling more so as a number 1 than a number 2. But yeah, Joel Embiid, just another year of him missing time. I'm not really sure why he wanted to play in the Olympics. I know it's a big deal getting a gold medal, but it didn't really set him up for success this year because he's only played 13 games so far, and he's averaging 24 points, 8 rebounds, and just does not look healthy out there when he does play. And it's constantly playing, missing 3 games, playing, missing 3 games. And maybe that's what Philadelphia needs to do for him to be healthy in the playoffs, because he hasn't been healthy in the playoffs in quite some time. But this team is currently the 11th seed in the Eastern Conference. You throw this team in the play-in tournament, I'm sure they would make it out of the play-in tournament just fine. But how would they do against Cleveland in round 1 or Boston in round 1? It would most likely be a round 1 exit, and then Embiid is another year older, Paul George is another year older, and this is the 2023 MVP. He was playing like an MVP before he got hurt last year as well, and it just feels like a completely different Joel Embiid when he's on the floor, and you don't even know when that's going to happen. So I think it's just been disappointing for the 76ers as a whole. I'm friends with a lot of Sixers fans here in Philadelphia, and they just don't really care about the team. They're more invested in the Eagles and the Phillies, and there were more Knicks fans against the 76ers at the Wells Fargo Arena on a Wednesday night, and Embiid is 30 years old. He doesn't have that many years left in his prime with his body. I think it's just disappointing for just the lack of health once again with Embiid this year. This was originally going to be the Jamal Murray spot, and a lot of people tweeted at me. Jamal Murray's been one of the more disappointing players this year. I think he got off to a disappointing start, but I don't think he's actually been as disappointing as some of these other guys. So I replaced this guy with somebody that I didn't have high expectations for, but man, has he killed a lot of his trade value in Washington, and that is Kyle Kuzma. I was never the biggest Kyle Kuzma fan after his LA Lakers days. I liked him as a connecting secondary role with LeBron and AD over there. I've not enjoyed watching him as a top scoring option since he got traded to the Washington Wizards. He hasn't really been that consistent of a 3-point shooter. This year, he's been one of the worst shooters in the NBA in terms of volume and efficiency, taking 4.5 threes a night, shooting 25% from 3. Remember in the beginning of the video, I said how bad Bam was as a shooter? Kyle Kuzma is worse than Bam Adebayo, and this is a man that is averaging 5.5 threes throughout his career. He's been abysmal this year. His 2-point field goal percentage is one of the worst of his career. He is not a good defender, and maybe he's just not bought in Washington because they are the worst team in the NBA, and I get that. Maybe he'd be a better defender somewhere else. I just think it's been disappointing for the Wizards and their fans who thought maybe they'd get a first-round pick for Kuzma, and I don't think any team should give up a valuable first or a first in general for him at the deadline, because you do have to pay him $23 million this year, $20 million next year, and $19 million the year after that. And he's almost 30 years old. A player I thought was going to take a year 3 leap this year after maybe not having a down year last year, but didn't take that step offensively. That's Keegan Murray of the Sacramento Kings, a team that's actually been linked to Kyle Kuzma over the last few weeks. Keegan Murray did average 12 points per game as a rookie, but he shot 41% from 3 on 6 attempts a night. Last year as a sophomore, that went up to 15 points per game, but he did shoot just 36% from 3, which is still pretty good on 6.5 attempts a night. This year, he's taken 6 threes a night, 31% from 3. His points per game are down to 12, which makes sense. They did add DeMar DeRozan in the offseason. It's just not what you would like for what Keegan Murray was after his rookie year. I think he's taken steps defensively, and I think he's fine on that end of the floor, but somebody that's 6'8", that could really be this good hybrid forward defensively, but could also be an elite 3-point shooter, seems so valuable. They didn't want to trade him for an OG Anunoby or Pascal Siakam or Lauri Markkanen. Not sure if they regret that, but Keegan Murray has been disappointing in year 3. 100%. And he's also due for a contract extension at the end of this year. He can get rookie extended. If they don't extend him, that's fine. He's making $11 million on his rookie team option next year, but they're going to have to make some big decisions soon. And we know everything that's going on with De'Aaron Fox. DeMar DeRozan has been okay so far in Sacramento, and they still have a good team. They're still a borderline top 10 team net rating wise this year, and Keegan Murray would be one of the more interesting trade assets if they were going to decide to make him available. And I wonder if they will, just because he has been disappointing this year. But Kings fans, let me know what you think. I briefly mentioned him earlier in the video when I was just talking about the Blazers' future, but Deandre Ayton has just been disappointing this year. I remember just having a random thought in the offseason, like, what if Deandre Ayton, who's 26 years old, has the best year of his career? Been far from that. It's maybe been the worst year of his career. I'm sure Blazers fans are just done watching him. I just feel like he doesn't give that effort that you'd want out of your starting center, who's a former #1 overall pick, making $34 million. Yeah, it's just not been good whatsoever for Deandre Ayton in Portland this year. He's been recently playing less minutes per game than Donovan Clingan, and good. They should go with Donovan Clingan, who gives way better of an effort defensively for one of the worst defensive teams in the league this year, because you're just not getting that whatsoever out of Deandre Ayton, who had good offensive moments last year, and even his final year in Phoenix, like, really came down after that really good 21 and 22 seasons. Maybe that was a product of just playing with Chris Paul and him going from one of the greatest floor risers and just players to be around with in NBA history, going from that to a young, inexperienced point guard, Scoot Henderson, in Portland. It's just not doing well for Deandre Ayton, and man, what a fall off in his career. I do wonder what his next contract is going to look like. I'm sure Pacers fans in their front office are very happy that Phoenix matched that contract when they were willing to give him that rookie max extension a few off seasons ago. I'm just ready to see Donovan Clingan in Portland. It's just way better of a product right now, and I wonder if they can even trade Deandre Ayton anymore. who would want him? I think this player has been slightly disappointing this year, and Jazz fans, you can let me know if I'm wrong, but Lauri Markkanen, maybe his worst year in Utah so far. And maybe that's because the Jazz are one of the worst teams in the NBA, and he doesn't really have all that motivation to try on both ends of the floor. But this year, Markkanen is shooting 42% from the field, where last year he shot 48% from the field, and his first year in Utah, he shot 50% from the field. He's shooting 36% from three this year. He's getting to the line a little bit less, averaging a career low in Utah, 20 points per game and 6 rebounds, which is the fewest he has had since the 2022 season when he was playing on the Cleveland Cavaliers. And he's now making $42 million a year. I think you'd expect a little bit more out of your max contract player who's going to be getting paid $53 million in 2029. And like I said, maybe it's just because he's on the Utah Jazz. They're tanking right now. They're trying to rebuild. And I would expect Markkanen to get traded in the offseason. I think it would make sense for his career and for the Utah Jazz and their long-term outlook in their rebuild that's going on right now. But this year, I think, has been the worst year of Markkanen in Utah, where he's been an all-star level talent over the last 2 years, and we're not seeing that at all this year. I remember tweeting out at the end of the offseason, who could be somebody that breaks out this year? And I gave my prediction at Onyeka Okongwu, and I was like, this is going to be finally the year Onyeka Okongwu takes that starting center spot for Clint Capella. And at times he has this year, but he hasn't really looked great. And he hasn't started a single game. Clint Capella is still starting every single game. It's just been more so him playing more minutes a night than Clint Capella at times. But they have been dropping and dropping over the last few weeks, where he's now really playing just like 22-ish minutes a night. And he had back-to-back good games against the Bulls and the Suns. So hopefully that's a step in the right direction for Okongwu, who's averaging 11 points this year, 7.5 rebounds, which are career highs, but he's shooting 54%. The first year of his career where he's shooting less than 60% from the field, so he is struggling at the rim. He is taking more threes, though, and just hitting 23% of them, so maybe he should stop doing that. And I think he shows defensive flashes, but really hasn't taken a leap on that end of the floor either, because he's on a good contract, and I was so excited for him to start with Trae Young, but maybe he isn't that long-term answer at the 5 spot for the Atlanta Hawks. The Detroit Pistons have had a great year. It's a feel-good year for Pistons and their fans, and that's largely because of what Cade Cunningham is doing, but a player that I don't think has taken a step this year, he's still 21 years old, so he's still incredibly young, but that's Jalen Duren. I feel like it's been slightly disappointing for him in 2025, his third year in the league. I feel like he was always compared with Mark Williams, who is the second best center in this draft after Chet Holmgren, and Mark Williams has looked a lot better in a smaller sample size this year for the Charlotte Hornets, as Jalen Duren averaged 13.8 points per game last year. That is down to 9.5 points per game this year. He's playing 5 less minutes per night. Isaiah Stewart is a much better center option for them at times. He's shooting 68% from the field, but he's always going to be somebody that shoots at a high percentage rate from the field because of his limited shot diet on the floor, and I think he has not taken the steps defensively. I thought he was one of the worst pick and roll defenders in the league last year. Not really sure if that's been any better this year, which is a little bit of a shame to see, because he is going to be a restricted free agent at the end of next year, like Keegan Murray, and we mentioned before, so I don't think there's going to be an extension done this offseason. I still think he would have some trade value around the league if they wanted to go that route and look for an upgrade, but he's still 21 years old. He's still incredibly young. I would just like to see a little bit more strides defensively, and we haven't seen that this year. Speaking of a player that I don't think has improved much defensively and has probably taken a step back, that is Nick Claxton of the Brooklyn Nets. I'm not sure if it's just him playing on a rebuilding team and he doesn't really want to be a part of a tank and isn't trying as much, or maybe he got his bag where he's making $27 million this year. It is front loaded, but he's going to be getting paid $100 million throughout this year through 2028. That's a significant amount of money, so maybe Nick Claxton is just chilling that he got his bag now. But it doesn't look like he's as good of a rim protector as he was last year, and I think he's struggling at times. His blocks are way down, minutes per game are way down, his field goal percentage is a lot down as well, and just does not look like a great big man. And like I said, maybe it's just him playing in Brooklyn and he wants to get traded, and maybe it's just the overall feel for the game right now, and they're experimenting with some other guys like Noah Clowney there at the center position, and Daron Sharp will get his 15-ish minutes a game as well. But I think it has been a step back for Nick Claxton, and I hope he does bounce back next year when Brooklyn's got to be a little bit more exciting, because now watching Nets games, you're like, who are these guys that are playing? And the last player I want to talk about is one of the best that we're going to talk about in this video, because he has very high expectations. He played on Team USA in the Olympics with Bam Adebayo, Joel Embiid, and Tyrese Haliburton, who we've talked about in this video, so maybe that's somewhat of a curse, and that is going to be Devin Booker of the Phoenix Suns. And Devin Booker is still having a fine offensive year. He's had a very good stretch over his last few games against Charlotte twice, Utah and Atlanta, which aren't the best teams in the world defensively, but it is encouraging to see Devin Booker be a little bit more efficient, but we are seeing him have arguably the worst offensive year since 2018. Yeah, it's been a little bit since Booker's numbers have been like this, and he's playing a career high in minutes per game, because we know this Suns depth isn't great. He's averaging 25.2 points per game, which is the lowest since 2018, 44% from the field, lowest since 2018, 34% from three, which is the worst it's been since 2021. And I think he has struggled at times with his overall shot selection and his efficiency. Maybe it's just going from a different role on Team USA where he kind of liked being that connecting role, maybe that point guard playmaking role that he was also more familiar with last year because they didn't have Tyus Jones at that time. And this team has a very weird dynamic and a lot of issues that are going on outside of Devin Booker and their best player, Kevin Durant. But I think to his standards of what you think Devin Booker could be, and that's me thinking he could be a top 10 player in this league, he hasn't played like that this year. So that's what makes him disappointing in my eyes. So that is going to be it for me. I hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, I'd appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Let me know if you agree or disagree with any of these selections that I talked about in this video. And if there's a player that I didn't talk about that you think has been disappointing, like Jamal Murray, who I briefly mentioned before, let me know down below. Hit that subscribe button if you were not already, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.